Okay, so welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to look at motivation and inspiration.
Right.
And you hear those terms all the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes even kind of interchangeably.
Yeah.
But the material that we've been going through for this deep dive really kind of pulls those apart as distinct forces.
For sure.
And really understanding how they work and how you can use both intentionally could be a real key to reaching your goals and just feeling more on track in general.
Absolutely. And I think this deep dive is a great way to really examine what truly drives you. Whether
Right.
you're facing, a huge challenge, or you're pursuing some long-term ambition, or if you're just feeling kind of stuck,
Yeah.
having this clear understanding of motivation and inspiration can really offer you a fresh perspective
Yeah.
on your own internal drivers and how to move forward.
I think that's so true.
Yeah.
Because ultimately we all have things that we want to achieve,
Yeah.
whether those are professional milestones or personal aspirations.
Uh-huh.
And these two concepts, motivation and inspiration,
Right.
they're really fundamental to that whole process.
For sure.
So in this deep dive, we're going to start by getting super specific about what we actually mean by motivation.
Yeah.
We'll look at the different types of motivation, even take a little peek at the brain science behind it,
Right?
and then we'll move on to inspiration.
Okay.
We'll explore what makes inspiration so unique and how it's different from that motivation that get up and go energy.
Yeah.
So after we look at those separately, we'll kind of put them together and see how they play off each other.
Okay.
And then finally, we want to give you some really practical tools for actively using these in your own life.
Yeah.
And we might even touch on a few really fascinating examples just to kind of bring those points home.
Right on.
So ready to dive in?
I'm ready.
Okay, awesome.
Let's start with motivation. At its core, motivation is really all those internal and external factors that just propel us into action.
Yeah.
It's the push that gets things done.
Right.
What are some of the different ways that we experience this push?
Well, from what we've seen so far, I think it really boils down to two main categories.
Okay.
Intrinsic and extrinsic.
Right.
Intrinsic motivation.
Yeah.
That's the drive that comes from inside of you.
Yeah.
You do something because it's enjoyable to you.
Right.
Or it aligns with your own values.
Right.
Or just gives you a sense of satisfaction.
Totally.
So, for example, someone who loves coding
Yeah.
and they spend their free time working on personal coding projects just for the challenge of it
Yeah.
or as a creative outlet.
Yeah.
That's intrinsic motivation.
Exactly. The reward is internal. You
Yeah.
know, it's that feeling itself.
Right, right.
Now, extrinsic motivation is a little different.
Yeah.
As the name suggests, this comes from the outside.
Okay.
So this is when you're driven by external rewards, like bonuses or getting recognized for something or
Yeah.
getting promoted at work or even wanting to avoid something negative,
Right.
like missing a deadline.
Uh-huh.
So a clear example might be you pushing yourself to meet a sales target
Right.
because there's a commission tied to it.
Okay.
Or studying really hard to get certified in something so you can advance in your career.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of like that.
Right.
I want to because it feels right
Yeah.
versus I need to because I'll get something out of it.
Yeah.
And, it's fascinating to me to look at the science behind all this.
Yeah.
Our material mentioned dopamine,
Yeah.
that chemical in our brains.
Right.
That's associated with pleasure and reward.
It's like the reward chemical.
Yeah. So how does that tie into motivation?
Well, what's really interesting about dopamine is that it reinforces the behaviors
Okay.
that we're motivated to do.
Right.
So when we do something and our brain anticipates a good outcome,
Okay.
whether that's, the personal satisfaction of mastering something, right,
Right. Like intrinsically.
intrinsically, exactly.
Right.
Or maybe, getting a reward for finishing a task,
Yeah.
something external, you get a bonus or something.
Extrinsically. Yeah.
Extrinsically, dopamine is released.
Okay.
And that creates a pleasurable sensation.
Okay.
And that reinforces the connections in your brain
Okay.
that are associated with that behavior.
Right.
So that makes you more likely to do it again.
Gotcha.
And that's really how habits are formed.
Interesting.
So that consistent motivation, and then you get that perceived reward,
Yeah.
that strengthens those connections in your brain.
Oh, wow. So it's like a biological feedback loop.
It is.
Our brain is saying, that felt good. Let's do that again.
Exactly.
And we see that everywhere.
Everywhere.
Like athletes,
Yes.
they might love their sport so much,
Uh-huh.
that they push their physical limits.
Right.
They thrive in the thrill of competition.
Right.
That's that internal reward.
Yeah.
But they're also motivated by winning championships.
Yes.
And getting sponsors.
Of course.
And achieving personal bests that get them recognition.
Uh-huh.
So there's that external side too.
There's both.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, you see that with entrepreneurs too.
Yeah.
A lot of times they start out because they're just passionate about an idea. They want to, solve a problem in the world.
Right.
But as their company starts to grow,
Right.
Financial success becomes important and market share and the prestige of building a successful business.
Right.
So you start to see that external motivation come into play.
So interesting.
Yeah.
And what about students?
Oh, students. Yeah.
I mean, hopefully they're curious.
Yeah.
And they have a real thirst for knowledge.
Right.
But there's also the motivation of grades.
Totally.
And scholarships.
Right.
And, thinking about their future career.
Right.
So there's that external piece there, too.
Right.
So it sounds like motivation really is that engine that pushes us forward in life, whether it's fueled by our internal desires or, or incentives from the outside world.
Yeah.
So now let's switch gears a little bit and talk about inspiration.
Okay.
What exactly is inspiration?
Yeah.
And what is it about inspiration that makes it feel so different from motivation?
Yeah, I think inspiration is a little bit harder to pin down.
Yeah.
But the way I see it is that it's more profound
Uh-huh.
and often more emotional. It's like the spark that ignites our creativity, that fuels our passions, and that gives us a sense of purpose.
Okay.
It's less about like what I need to do today, and more about why am I doing any of this in the first place.
So it's less about checking things off a to-do list.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's more about connecting to something bigger.
I like that.
Yeah.
So where does that feeling of inspiration actually come from? What are some things that trigger that kind of deep connection?
Well, there's a ton of things.
Okay.
But one of the biggest is our role models.
Okay.
And our mentors. When we see somebody we respect do something really meaningful, or they live their life in a way that we admire, that can really spark a sense of possibility.
Yeah.
It makes us think, well, if they can do that, maybe I can too.
Yeah, it's like seeing a possible future.
Exactly. And it suddenly feels more real.
I love that.
Yeah. And, our own experiences can be super inspiring, too.
Oh, for sure.
Like when we overcome a big challenge, or we finally achieve something we thought was impossible.
Yeah.
Or even just witnessing something powerful.
Uh-huh.
Those experiences can totally change our perspective.
Right.
And give us a new sense of purpose.
It's like turning those big moments into fuel for our inner drive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. And sometimes it comes from external things.
Yeah. What about that?
Art, music, literature, the natural world.
Our material mentioned.
Yeah. Those things can have a huge impact on us emotionally, and even just like how we think.
Right.
A piece of music can stir up all these feelings and trigger all kinds of creative thoughts, or a powerful book can make you think about things differently and ignite a passion for something you never thought about.
Yeah.
And just being out in nature can make you feel so connected to everything, and that can lead to moments of clarity.
It's like those external things can unlock something inside of us.
They can, like a feeling or an idea that was already there, but we hadn't really noticed it.
And our sources also talked about people in history.
Oh, yeah.
Who've been really inspired.
Right.
Can you give us a couple of examples?
Yeah. So think about Steve Jobs.
Right.
He wasn't just driven to make better gadgets.
Right.
He wanted to create technology that was intuitive and easy to use. And he believed that would empower people and change how we interact with the world. Mm-hmm. That vision was a constant source of inspiration for him.
Yeah.
And it fueled his incredible innovation.
That's so cool.
And what about Oprah Winfrey?
Okay.
Her ability to connect with people and empower her audience comes from a really genuine desire to make a difference.
Right.
And that sense of purpose is so inspiring.
Yeah.
It fuels all the work that she does.
Yeah.
And then you have someone like Elon Musk.
Right.
With his ambitions in space travel and green energy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's clearly driven by a vision for the future.
Yeah.
And that inspiration keeps him going.
Even with those risky projects.
Yeah.
So in all those cases, you can see that deeper why.
Right.
That bigger purpose.
Yes.
That goes way beyond just the everyday stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we have a better understanding of motivation and inspiration, I think it's time to really get into the nitty-gritty. What are the core differences?
Right.
Our sources talked about direction versus drive.
Yes.
What do you think they meant by that?
That's a really important point.
Okay.
Inspiration gives you direction.
Okay.
It shows you the path, and it gives you that why.
Yeah.
The reason you're doing something,
Uh-huh.
it's like knowing where you want to go,
Right.
but motivation is what actually propels you forward on that path.
Okay.
It's the energy and the commitment
Yeah.
that keeps you going, even when things get tough.
So it's like inspiration is setting your compass,
Exactly.
and motivation is the energy to actually walk in that direction.
That's a great way to put it.
What about sustainability?
Yeah.
The material suggested that inspiration might actually be a more long-lasting force.
I think that's true.
Okay.
Because inspiration is usually tied to our values,
Uh-huh.
our deepest passions,
Right.
our sense of purpose.
Yeah.
It comes from a deeper well of energy inside of us.
Okay.
Motivation, especially that extrinsic motivation,
Right.
sometimes needs a little more of a boost.
Yeah.
You might need those rewards
Yeah.
or that external pressure to keep going.
Right.
But inspiration, when it really hits you,
Yeah.
can sustain you for much longer,
Okay.
even when there aren't any immediate rewards.
So interesting.
Yeah, it's like that deep well that we can draw from.
I like that.
Yeah.
What about in terms of our daily lives?
Okay.
Practically speaking,
Yeah.
how are motivation and inspiration different?
Well, motivation is really tied to action
Okay.
and specific tasks.
Right.
It's about setting goals
Right.
and making plans and then actually doing those things. It's the energy that gets you to work out or to finish that big project at work or
Yeah.
to study for that test.
Okay.
Inspiration, on the other hand, is more about your mindset
Okay.
and how you think creatively
Uh-huh.
and that sense of purpose that guides you.
It's the why behind the what and the how.
Exactly.
So motivation is more about the doing, and inspiration is more about the being.
Right. Or the envisioning,
Yeah, I like that.
the bigger picture.
And finally, our sources talk about the difference between the emotional side and the logical side.
Right.
Can you unpack that a little bit?
Sure. Inspiration is usually rooted in emotions,
Okay.
our values, and what we find meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
It just hits us on a deeper level.
Yeah.
Motivation can definitely be influenced by emotions, too.
Right. Like wanting people to like us or being afraid to fail.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it can also come from logic and reason.
Okay.
Like maybe you decide to go for a certain career
Right.
because it'll give you financial security.
Yeah.
That's a logical motivator.
Right.
But inspiration's more likely to come from something that really moves you, something you really believe in,
Yeah.
or something that gives you a sense of meaning.
Right.
It's more about the heart.
So we've covered a lot of ground.
We
talked about the definitions and types, the science behind it all. We looked at some sources of inspiration
Yeah.
and really highlighted the differences between these two.
You did.
But now I think it's time for the million-dollar question.
Okay.
How can we actually use this in our own lives?
Yeah.
How do we cultivate both motivation and inspiration?
Right.
And how do we find that perfect balance between the two?
Right.
Yeah, I think finding that balance is key.
Okay. It's about nurturing both your inspiration and your motivation
Right.
and being aware of what you need at any given time.
Yeah.
There are times when you need that spark of inspiration to give you direction or to reignite your passion.
Right.
And then there are times when you need that pure motivation to power through and get things done.
So let's get practical.
Okay.
What are some things we can do to fuel our motivation?
Okay, well, one of the best ways is to set SMART goals.
Yeah, I've heard of those.
Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Right, right.
When you know exactly what you're aiming for and you can track your progress, it's way easier to stay motivated.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like having a roadmap and then building good habits is huge.
Okay.
And discipline, having those routines in place
Yeah,
can help you keep going even when you're not feeling inspired.
that's so important.
Yeah. And another thing is to find an accountability partner.
Oh, yeah, like a buddy system.
Yeah, someone you can share your goals with
Right.
and your progress.
Uh-huh.
That can really help you stay on track.
So those are all great ways to boost motivation.
Right.
But what about nurturing inspiration?
Yeah, inspiration is a little different. It's
Yeah.
more about creating the right environment.
Okay.
So surround yourself with positive influences,
Yeah.
people who inspire you,
Ah.
books that make you think,
Right.
places that make you feel energized,
Yeah.
that can really help inspiration to grow
Yeah.
and do creative things, even if it's just for fun.
Okay.
Writing, music, painting, whatever. And make time for reflection,
Okay.
journaling, meditation, things like that,
Right.
that can help you tap into those inner sources of inspiration.
So it's all about creating the right conditions,
It is.
both internally and externally,
Exactly.
to allow that inspiration to flourish.
And I think most importantly, never stop learning.
Oh, yeah.
Be curious about the world,
Uh-huh.
explore new ideas, different perspectives.
Right.
That's what keeps that spark alive.
So it sounds like motivation is all about the practical stuff.
It is.
Like structure and external support.
Mm-hmm.
But inspiration is about our inner world
Yes.
and how we see the world around us.
Right.
So we need to cultivate that environment.
Exactly.
And our sources said that both are really important for personal growth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, personal growth isn't just about checking boxes and hitting goals.
Right. It's about becoming the kind of person
Yeah.
who is driven by purpose and energized by inspiration.
Yeah.
And by understanding these two forces
Uh-huh.
and using them in our lives, we're investing in our well-being.
Right.
And our ability to deal with life's challenges
Mm-hmm.
and our overall sense of fulfillment.
This has been so insightful.
It has been fun.
So to sum it all up, motivation is that force that gets us going.
Yeah.
Whether it comes from within us
Mhm.
or from the outside world.
Yeah.
And it helps us to go after our goals.
Right?
Inspiration, on the other hand, is that deeper spark
Yes.
that gives us vision and purpose.
Mm-hmm. It's that long-term fuel
Yeah.
that keeps us going.
So inspiration sets the course.
It is.
Motivation gets us there.
Exactly.
Inspiration can last longer.
Yeah.
But motivation sometimes needs a little boost.
It does.
Motivation is tied to action,
Mm-hmm.
while inspiration is more about our mindset and creativity.
Right?
And in the end, having both is essential
It is.
for true success and happiness.
Couldn't agree more.
So as you go about your day today,
Yeah.
just take a minute to think about this.
Okay.
What really motivates you right now? What drives you at work and in your personal life?
Uh-huh.
And on the other side of the coin, what truly inspires you?
Right.
What makes you passionate?
Yeah.
What makes you want to aim higher?
Those are important questions.
Yeah, and think about how having a clear vision,
Yeah.
that element of inspiration,
Yeah.
and combining that with consistent action,
Uh-huh.
that motivation piece.
Right. Yeah.
Think about how that could change your approach to your goals
For sure.
and your dreams for the future.
It could change everything.
Yeah, maybe as a first step, just think of one small thing you can do today
Yeah.
to boost your motivation or your inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe set a small goal to get that momentum going.
Right.
Or do something that, always makes you feel inspired.
Yeah. Something that energizes you.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
See you next time.
See ya.